The first time my father toasted to my failure, I was standing 10 feet away, holding the last box of my life. My name is Ava Carter, I'm 30 years old, and the day my dad threw a full-blown backyard party to celebrate kicking me out of his house, he didn't even try to hide it. He turned it into a spectacle. Like it was the 4th of July and I was the fireworks. I pulled into the driveway expecting silence, maybe tension, maybe awkwardness. Instead, I got music blasting. Old school country, loud enough to shake the windows. People were laughing. Beer bottles clinked. The smell of grilled burgers hung thick in the Arizona heat. And then I saw it. A giant banner stretched across the garage in bold red letters. GOOD FREELOADER. I actually blinked, like maybe my brain just refused to process it. But no, it was real. And so were the people standing underneath it. Neighbors, family, friends, even kids from down the street. Smiling like this was some kind of neighborhood celebration. Then someone yelled, "Hey, the guest of honor finally showed up." Laughter exploded. I didn't cry. Not then. Not there. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about humiliation. When it hits that hard, it doesn't feel like sadness. It feels like your entire body goes cold, like you just stepped out of yourself and you're watching it happen to someone else. My dad, Richard Carter, was standing by the grill, wearing one of those stupid aprons that said, "KJOFTHUS." He raised his beer like he was making a toast. "Look who decided to show up for her own eviction," he said, grinning. More laughter. My younger sister, Megan, had her phone out. Of course she did. Recording everything for Instagram like this was content. "Say something, Ava," she called out. "At least pretend you're grateful." Grateful. I gripped my car keys so tight they cut into my palm. Someone tossed something at me. It hit the side of my car and slid down slowly. A hot dog. "There's your last free meal!" a guy shouted from the patio. And the worst part, nobody looked uncomfortable. Nobody hesitated. They believed it. They believed the story they'd been told about me. That I was some lazy, freeloading, 30-year-old woman living off her poor, overworked father. That I had no real job, no direction, no ambition. And standing there, in that moment, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just a lie anymore. It was their truth. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. Because I knew exactly how that would go. In families like mine, the second you defend yourself, you become the problem. So I walked past them. Straight through the laughter, through the smell of barbecue and cheap beer. Through my father's smug smile. Into the house. The inside was quiet. Empty. Like none of the chaos outside existed. My last box was sitting in the laundry room. On top of it, there was a note written in black marker. Starred KT. I stared at it for a second before opening the box. Inside, instant ramen. Dryer sheets. A half-used roll of trash bags and a printed list of affordable apartments in the area. I let out a small laugh, not because it was funny. Because it was so ridiculously theatrical. Like they had rehearsed this. Like they needed me to feel small in a way that looked creative. I picked up the box and walked back outside. My uncle, Tommy, was already halfway drunk, waving a beer bottle like he was giving a speech. "Back in my day," he slurred, "if you were 30 and still living at home, you'd be too ashamed to show your face." "Preach!" someone yelled. Then he looked straight at me. "Your mom would be embarrassed, Ava." That one landed. My mom had been dead for 9 years. He knew exactly what he was doing. I felt it. Right there in my chest. That crack. That familiar, dangerous crack that used to make me react. But this time it didn't turn into anger. It turned into clarity. Because suddenly, everything made sense. Every joke, every comment. Every time my dad said, "Must be nice," when he saw me working from my laptop. Every time Megan rolled her eyes when I said I had deadlines. Every time they dismissed me like I was just existing in their space, instead of holding their entire world together. They actually believed I was nothing. I put the box in my trunk slowly. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. And I took a picture. The banner. The grill. My father laughing. My sister recording. All of them, frozen in that moment. So sure they were witnessing my lowest point. My dad saw me. "What, you taking a souvenir?" He smirked. I looked him dead in the eyes. And for the first time that entire day I spoke. "No," I said calmly. I'm saving this for later. Something in my voice made his smile flicker. Just for a second. Then I got in my car and drove away. No goodbye. No scene, just silence. And that silence. That was the part they didn't understand. Because in their world, I was supposed to fight back. Cry. Beg. Prove them right. Instead, I disappeared. For 3 days, nobody called. Because they thought they had won. They thought they had finally taught me a lesson. But what they didn't realize was this: I had already been carrying them for years. Quietly. Invisibly. Financially. Emotionally. Practically. And the second I left, everything they built their lives on started to crack. The first message came on Monday. Then another. Then 5 more. By the end of the week, my phone was blowing up with calls I never thought I'd get. And one message stood out more than all the rest. From my father. Call me. Please. I'm begging you. That's when I smiled. Because the party was over. And the consequences had just started. The first crack in my father's empire didn't come with a bang, it came with an email he didn't know how to answer. Monday morning, 9:17 a.m., I was sitting in a quiet coffee shop just outside Denver. My new city, my new life. Staring at my laptop while snow dusted the sidewalks outside. A week ago, I was standing in 100-degree Arizona heat being publicly humiliated. Now, I was sipping an overpriced vanilla latte, wrapped in silence so peaceful it almost felt suspicious. And then my phone buzzed. Dad, I let it ring. It buzzed again. Then again. 6 missed calls in under 10 minutes. I didn't pick up. Instead, I opened my email, and there it was. A forwarded message from one of his biggest clients. A municipal contract worth more than he'd ever admit out loud. Subject line, Fin el nati ebe for signement. I leaned back in my chair slowly. Because I already knew what had happened. The insurance certificate attached to the permit filing had expired. It was a small detail, the kind of thing most people would miss. But not me. I used to catch those things before they turned into disasters. I used to fix them quietly. Efficiently. Invisibly. I used to save him. But this time, I wasn't there, and now the city was threatening to pull the contract. I closed my laptop. Took another sip of coffee. And let him figure it out. For the first time in years, it wasn't my problem. By Tuesday, things got worse. I know because Megan texted me. Dad says stop being dramatic and log into the system. I actually laughed out loud in the middle of the cafe. Dramatic. That was always their favorite word for me. Not overworked. Not exhausted. Not the reason everything functioned. Dramatic. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my banking app and confirmed what I already knew. Every single backup payment I had quietly tied to his business. Gone. Cancelled. Disconnected. The project management software subscription? Expired. The vendor portal linked to my card? Removed. The utility backup payments? Cut off. For 3 years, I had been the invisible safety net. Every time something almost collapsed, I stepped in before anyone noticed. Not anymore. By Wednesday morning, the panic started sounding different. My phone rang at 7:12 a.m. I answered this time, not because I felt guilty. Because I wanted to hear it. Ava, sweetheart. My dad's voice came through, softer than I'd heard in years. There's some confusion with the workshop utility account. Confusion. I stared out the window at the slow snowfall. Is there? I said calmly. I think your card might still be linked somehow. He continued quickly. Power company says there's a pending shutoff. Probably just a mix-up. A mix-up. 3 years of covering his failures reduced to a mix-up. I smiled slightly. That's strange, I said. You should probably handle it. Silence. Not long, just long enough for him to realize something had shifted. Ava, he said, voice tightening. Don't do this. Don't do this. Like I was the one causing the problem. Like the system hadn't been built on my back in the first place. I'm not doing anything, I replied. I'm just not fixing it anymore. And then I hung up. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. For the first time in my life, I felt steady. By Thursday, the calls weren't just from him anymore. My Uncle Tommy left me a voicemail. Sober. That alone told me how bad things were. Hey, kid, he said, voice strained. Listen, about the party. I didn't mean any of that. You know how I get when I drink. I rolled my eyes. Classic. Apology after consequences. Anyway, he continued quickly, we got this job tomorrow. Big wrap install. If we lose it, it's gonna screw everybody. Can you just help us out real quick? Like before. Everybody, that word again. Funny how I was never part of everybody when they were laughing at me. But suddenly, I was essential again. I didn't call him back. Friday was when everything snapped. Megan called me crying, actual tears. And that was new. Ava, I need help, she said, voice shaky. Dad's losing it. Uncle Tommy's blaming everyone. Grandma says this is God punishing us. I stayed quiet. Let her talk. I need $600 for rent. She rushed out. My hours got cut and Dad said he'd help, but now he's saying cash flow is weird and I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not loud, not cruel. Just real. Cash flow is weird. I repeated. Don't make this a thing, Iva, she snapped, instantly defensive. There it was. That phrase. The one that had followed me my entire life. Don't make this a thing. Don't make it a thing when Dad belittled me. Don't make it a thing when Tommy crossed lines. Don't make it a thing when Megan borrowed money and forgot to pay it back. My feelings were always the problem. Their behavior. Just normal. I leaned back in my chair. Do you know why Dad can't help you? I asked calmly. She hesitated. No. I opened a file on my laptop. A spreadsheet. Clean, organized, detailed. 3 years of receipts, transactions, payments, proof, because I was helping him, I said simply. Silence. The kind that stretches. What do you mean? She asked slowly. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I just sent her a screenshot. One small piece of the full picture. Her name. Dad's company. The workshop utilities. Amounts. Dates, patterns. Underneath I typed one line. Since you're interested in contribution. She didn't reply for 2 hours. When she finally did, it was just one message. What is this? I stared at the screen. Then typed back, a sample. That night, my dad called 6 times. By the 3rd call, the anger was gone. By the 5th, so was the pride. By the 6th, all that was left was panic. Ava, please, his voicemail said, we need to talk. I don't think I understood everything you were handling. Just call me back so we can fix this. Fix this. That's what he thought this was. A temporary problem. A glitch. Something I would come back and solve like always. But he still didn't get it. This wasn't a breakdown. This was exposure. And for the first time in his life, he was standing in the middle of consequences he couldn't talk his way out of. Saturday morning, his message changed. 3 words. Talk now, please. I stared at it for a long time, then I finally replied tomorrow. Noon. Public place. He responded instantly, home. I smiled. Of course he did. Home was where he controlled the narrative, where he could interrupt, deflect, rewrite, where there were no witnesses. I typed back, no, you wanted an audience when I left. I paused then added, you can have one when you ask why. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then nothing, and in that silence, I knew something had finally shifted. Because for the first time, he wasn't sure he was in control anymore. And he was right. He wasn't. Tomorrow, he was going to find out exactly who I had been all along. And exactly how much it had cost him to treat me like nothing. The moment my father realized I wasn't bluffing, was the moment he stopped seeing me as his daughter. And started seeing me as a threat. Sunday. Noon. A roadside diner just off the highway. One of those places where truckers eat in silence, and nobody cares if your life is falling apart at the table next to them. I chose it on purpose. Neutral ground, no family audience, no home advantage, just truth sitting under fluorescent lights. I got there first, not because I was nervous, but because I wanted control of at least one thing. I ordered coffee. Black. Didn't touch it. Just sat there, watching the door. At exactly 11:52, his truck pulled in. Crooked. Too fast. That told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't calm. He wasn't prepared. He was rattled. And when he walked in, he wasn't alone. Of course he wasn't. Uncle Tommy followed behind him, shoulders tense, eyes darting around like he didn't want to be seen. I almost smiled. Men like them. They never take a woman seriously unless another man is present to witness it. They slid into the booth across from me. Neither of them ordered anything. That was new too. Usually, my dad would make a show, Coffee, eggs, control of the conversation. Not today. Today, he looked at me like he was trying to figure out who I was. What is this about? He asked, already defensive. No hello, no apology. Just pressure. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. Thick, clean, organized. I placed it gently on the table and slid it toward him. What is that? He asked, frowning. I met his eyes. The difference between your story and mine. He let out a short laugh. Dismissive. Predictable. Then he opened it, and everything changed. I watched his face as his eyes scanned the first page. Confident, then confused, then tight. By the second page, he wasn't leaning back anymore. By the third, he stopped breathing normally. What the hell is this? He muttered. Uncle Tommy leaned over, read the numbers, and whispered, Jesus. That was the moment it hit, because this wasn't emotion. This wasn't an argument. This was proof. 31 pages. Every dollar I had covered. Every emergency payment. Every invoice I fixed. Every system I held together. Every single time I stepped in while they called me useless. Organized into sections: company expenses, household support, direct transfers, unpaid labor, screenshots, receipts, dates, patterns. No drama, no exaggeration, just facts. Cold, clear, unavoidable. My dad flipped a page harder than necessary. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You're inflating everything. I didn't raise my voice. Am I? He jabbed at a line. This software, you used it too. That's not just for me. It's for your company. I replied calmly. Another page. These fuel payments. Temporary. 3 months, I said. All after you told me payroll was fine. Silence. Heavy. Then he reached for his safest argument. The one he always used when logic failed. Families help each other, he said. I nodded slowly. They do. He leaned back slightly, like he had regained ground. That's when I tilted my head and added, but when I lived in your house, you called it freeloading. His jaw tightened. And when you lived off my money, I continued softly, it became family. That one landed. Hard. Don't do this here, he muttered under his breath. I held his gaze. You mean with witnesses? Uncle Tommy shifted uncomfortably. Ava, come on, he said. I was drunk at the party. You know I didn't mean. You didn't apologize when you were sober. I cut in. He went quiet. Because there was nothing to say. My dad leaned forward again, voice sharper now. Fine, he said. Let's say you helped more than we realized. You were still living in my house at 30. There it was. His entire belief system. The roof over my head erased everything else. I nodded once. If I had paid rent to a stranger, I said evenly, and kept my money out of your business, you would have lost that company a year and a half ago. He didn't respond. So I kept going. If I had billed you like a client for everything I fixed, you'd be bankrupt. Uncle Tommy looked down. My dad didn't blink. The only reason you got to call me a freeloader, I said quietly, is because I loved you enough to help you quietly. That was the moment something in him shifted. Not guilt, not regret. Calculation. He flipped further into the packet and then he saw it, the photo, the banner stretched across the garage. Guillaume Dnce, FRLODR. Him standing underneath it smiling. He froze, then looked up at me. You took this for leverage, he said. I shook my head. No. I leaned forward slightly. I took it because I knew you'd pretend it wasn't that bad. Uncle Tommy rubbed his face. So what now? He asked. What do you want? That question. It followed me my whole life. Like everything I did had to lead to a demand. I sat back in my seat, and for the first time in that entire conversation, I felt completely free. Nothing, I said. They both blinked. What? My dad said. I don't want anything, I repeated. That's the part you still don't understand. Silence. I already paid, I said simply. I'm just done. His jaw tightened again. You can't just walk away, he snapped. Not after all this. You're gonna let everything collapse over a grudge. I didn't flinch. I didn't leave because of a grudge, I said. I held his eyes. I left because your disrespect finally cost more than my loyalty. That hit deeper than anything else. Because it wasn't emotional. It was final. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then he asked the only question that actually mattered to him. How much of this can you turn back on? Not are you okay? Not, we were wrong. Just operations, I almost smiled. Some things can be fixed, I said calmly. Some can't. He leaned forward. Then fix them. There it was, not a request. A command, like nothing had changed. Like I was still his invisible solution. I reached into my bag again, pulled out a second envelope, and placed it next to the folder. What's this? He asked. Resources? He frowned. Bookkeepers, tax services, business attorneys, utility assistance programs. I slid it closer to him. That's all I'm offering. He stared at it like it insulted him. Then his voice dropped. Low, sharp. If you walk out now, don't expect to come back when things turn around. I picked up my keys slowly. And stood. Then I looked down at him. Calm. Certain. Dad, I said, the only reason things ever turned around was because I was standing behind you pushing. And then, I walked away. No hesitation, no second glance. Just done. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. Because when you remove the one person holding everything together, the collapse doesn't happen all at once. It happens in waves. And the next wave was going to hit harder than any of them were ready for. The first time my grandmother tried to guilt me back into that house, she didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She prayed over me like I was the problem. And somehow that felt worse than the party. It was Tuesday morning when her call came through. I almost didn't answer. But something in me knew this wasn't going to be about love. It was going to be about control. Ava, sweetheart. My grandmother, Evelyn Carter, said softly, her voice wrapped in that familiar, suffocating calm. I think we need to have a conversation. Like Christians. I leaned back against my kitchen counter, staring out at the quiet Colorado street below. About what? I asked. A pause. Then she sighed. This bitterness you're holding on to. There it was. Not the banner. Not the humiliation. Not the years of being used. My reaction. Always my reaction. I see, I said quietly. Your father may have spoken harshly. She continued. But he's under a lot of pressure. And humiliating your family over money. It's just not a good look, Ava. It's not ladylike. I actually closed my eyes for a second. Because the audacity. It was almost impressive. Humiliating my family. I repeated. Yes, she said gently. All this accounting. Keeping score. If you were truly generous, you wouldn't be counting. I let that sit in the air between us. Then I said something I had never said to her before. Generosity doesn't keep score, I said calmly. A pause. Accounting does. Silence. Sharp. Uncomfortable. Good. Because for the first time, she didn't have a ready-made response. So I kept going. If I send you proof, I said, my voice steady, that Dad and Uncle Tommy have been relying on me to keep that business alive while calling me a freeloader. I took a breath. Will you tell the truth for once? Another pause. Longer this time. Heavier. Then she said the only thing people like her ever say when the truth corners them. Ava, that's not how families work. I smiled faintly. Because that was my answer. Not yes, not no, just avoidance. Cowardice dressed up as wisdom. I thought so, I said quietly. And I hung up. That conversation should have made me angry. It didn't. It made me clear. Because I finally understood something I had spent years trying to ignore. Nobody in that house was confused about what I had done for them. They knew. They just needed it to stay invisible, because the moment it became visible, their entire narrative collapsed. An hour later, my dad texted me. Talk now, please. 3 words. No pride, no authority, just urgency. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, already did. He didn't reply. For the first time in my life, he had nothing to say. But the story didn't end there. Because 3 days later, my sister showed up at my door. Unannounced. Unfiltered. Unrecognizable. I opened the door and barely recognized her. Megan Carter. The girl who used to spend 2 hours getting ready just to go to Target. Was standing there in leggings, a wrinkled hoodie, and zero makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun like she didn't even care anymore. And her eyes. Exhausted. Raw. Hey, she said awkwardly. I didn't move. Didn't invite her in. Just waited. Because this wasn't a social visit. I didn't know where else to go. She admitted. There it was. Not, I missed you. I'm sorry. Need. Always need. I stepped aside. Come in. She walked in slowly, looking around my apartment like it was something foreign. Quiet, clean, peaceful. No tension, no noise, no constant pressure hanging in the air. This is nice, she said softly. I nodded. It's peaceful, she swallowed. Yeah, that word probably felt unfamiliar. We sat down. Silence stretched between us. Then finally, she broke. I was awful to you? Just like that? No excuses, no performance, just truth? And honestly, that caught me off guard. I didn't say anything, just let her talk. The party, she continued, her voice cracking slightly. That was messed up. Like, really messed up. I don't even know why I did that. I raised an eyebrow slightly. You do? She looked down. And that's when she said something that changed everything. Because Dad was watching, she whispered. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But understanding. I wanted to be on the right side of him for once. She admitted. You were always the target. And I just stayed out of it. I leaned back slowly, because there it was. The truth no one ever says out loud. Families like mine don't stay stable because they're healthy, they stay stable because someone is always absorbing the damage. And that someone had been me. When you were there? Megan said quietly, he aimed everything at you. She looked up at me. Now you're gone. Her voice dropped. He's turning on everyone. Silence. Heavy. Real. That's how it works, I said. She nodded slowly. I see that now. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question I had been holding in for years. Did you actually believe I was freeloading? She didn't answer right away. Which told me everything. Finally, she sighed. Nogue. I stared at her. I knew you were helping, she admitted. I just didn't know how much. A beat. And if I admitted Dad was lying. Her voice dropped even lower. Everything in that house got scary. There it was. Not just cruelty. Fear. Cowardly, yes, but human. And somehow that made it worse, because it meant she had chosen silence. Chosen safety. Over truth. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said quietly, that doesn't make it okay. She nodded. I know. Another silence. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. Are you gonna help? Of course. Even now. Even after everything. That's what she needed to know. I didn't hesitate. No, she flinched. Not dramatically. Just enough. Dad thinks everything can be fixed if you just stop being stubborn, she said carefully. I let out a small breath. Of course he does. Because in his world I was never a person. I was a solution. A function. Something that existed to make his life easier. Well, it's not working, she said quietly. The business is falling apart. Uncle Tommy missed 2 jobs. One of the printers got sold. Grandma's freaking out about money. I listened. Calm, detached. Because for the first time, their chaos wasn't mine. Sounds like they should have planned better, I said. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Good. Because this version of me didn't exist in that house, not really. I'm not asking you to go back, she said quickly. I didn't know it was that bad. I nodded slowly. It was worse, she swallowed. I believe you. Another pause. Then, softer this time. I'm sorry, Ava. That one almost got through. But apologies don't erase patterns, and they definitely don't rebuild trust overnight. So I said the only honest thing I could. I hear you. Not it's okay. Not I forgive you. Just, I hear you. She nodded. And for the first time, she didn't push. That night, I let her stay. One night. Not because she deserved it. But because I wasn't them, and I never would be. But as she slept on my couch, I sat awake, staring at the ceiling. Because something in my gut told me, this wasn't over. Not even close, because people like my father. They don't accept loss. They escalate. And the next move he made was going to prove exactly who he really was. The moment my father tried to hire me back. Like I was just another employee he could underpay and control. I realized he still didn't see me as his daughter. He saw me as infrastructure. Replaceable. Negotiable owned. The email came at 6:42 a.m. Subject line Family Resolution Proposal. I was sitting at my kitchen island, scrolling through client notes, when I saw his name pop up. For a second, I just stared at it. Because after everything, the diner, the packet, the silence, I thought maybe, just maybe he was going to apologize. I opened it. That hope lasted exactly 3 seconds. Ava, it started. No hi, no warmth, just my name. Like a memo. Given recent misunderstandings and the current operational challenges facing the business, I am proposing a short-term arrangement. I actually laughed, out loud. Because of course he was. Not an apology, a proposal I kept reading. A 90-day contractor role to assist in stabilizing company systems and restoring vendor relationships. My jaw tightened. Compensation to be discussed once cash flow improves. There it was. Deferred payment. Again. Like always. Work now. Maybe get paid later. If he felt like it. And then the line that made my stomach turns. This would also be an opportunity for you to repair trust within the family. Repair trust. I read that sentence 3 times. Just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. He thought I was the one who broke something. He thought I was the one who needed to fix it. I set my phone down slowly. Because anger, that would have been easy. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. Crystal clear. Unavoidable. My father wasn't sorry. He was inconvenienced. And now he wanted his system back. I picked up my phone again. Typed 4 sentences. No emotion. No explanation. Just truth. I am not returning. I am not providing unpaid or deferred labor. Do not contact me for business support again. Future communication should be respectful and personal only. I hit send, and just like that, for the first time in my life, I chose myself without hesitation. His reply came almost instantly. So that's it. I stared at the message. Then another one came through. You're just going to sit there and watch your father lose everything. There it was. The hook. The one he had used my entire life. Guilt, responsibility, fear. Because kids like me, we're trained to believe one thing above all else: if our parents are drowning, it's our job to save them, no matter what it costs us. I sat there for a long time, reading his message over and over again, feeling that old pull in my chest, that instinct to fix it, to step in, to make it better. But then, something different happened. Instead of reacting, I thought. Really thought. About everything. The banner. The laughter. The years of being invisible. The way he looked at me in that diner. Not with regret, but with calculation. And suddenly, that hook didn't feel as strong anymore, because I saw it for what it was. Manipulation. Clean, familiar, effective, but not powerful anymore. So I typed back, "You are not losing everything because I left." I paused. Then finished it. You are losing everything because you built a life that only worked while someone you despised kept carrying it. I stared at the screen after I sent it. Waiting, for anger. For an explosion. For something. But nothing came. No reply. No call. Just silence. And somehow that silence felt heavier than anything he could have said. Because for the first time, he had no control. Days passed. Then a week. Then 2. And slowly information started reaching me. Not from him. From Megan. Short texts, updates, fragments of a life unraveling. The workshop almost got shut off. Dad had to sell one of the printers. Uncle Tommy didn't show up to a job again. Grandma keeps saying this is punishment. Each message felt like watching dominoes fall, one after another. Exactly the way I knew they would. Because I had been the one holding them up. And now, gravity was doing its job. Then one message hit different. The house is going up for sale. I froze. Read it again, and again. Because that house? That was his pride, his proof. The thing he always used to show the world he was successful. He used to say, "Everything I built from nothing." But that wasn't true. He built it on people, on me, and now, without that support, he couldn't hold on to it anymore. Why? I texted back. Megan replied almost instantly, "Because he has to." No explanation, no drama. Just reality. I set my phone down slowly. Because that was it. That was the moment it became real. Not just consequences. Not just stress, collapse. And for a second, just a second, I felt it. That old instinct. That pull. Maybe I should help. Just a little. Just enough to stabilize things. Just enough to know. I stopped myself. Because I knew exactly where that road led. Right back to the same place. Same pattern. Same pain, different packaging. So I did something I had never done before. Nothing. I didn't call. I didn't offer help. I didn't step in. I let it happen. Not out of revenge, not out of cruelty, but because for the first time, I understood something that changed everything. Saving them was destroying me, and I wasn't willing to pay that price anymore. A month later, a package showed up at my door. No return address. Just my name written in my father's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside there was a single item. A worn, slightly stained recipe card. My mom's handwriting. Chicken pot pie. My chest tightened instantly. Because I hadn't seen her handwriting in years. At the bottom of the card, in smaller letters, she had written, "Add extra time if Richard complains." I let out a laugh that turned into something else halfway through. Because for a moment, she felt close again. Real. Alive. And for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt grounded, like I finally understood something she probably knew all along. I framed the card that night. Put it on my kitchen counter. Not as a reminder of him, but as a reminder of her. Of what love was supposed to feel like. Simple, kind, real. That was the last thing he ever sent me. No apology, no explanation. Just that. And maybe that was his way of saying something he didn't know how to say out loud. Or maybe it was just another attempt to reach me without actually changing. Either way, I didn't respond. Because some things don't need a reply. But what I didn't know yet was that the final piece of this story, the part that would change everything, was still coming. And it wasn't going to come from him. It was going to come from the truth. Finally catching up with all of them. The moment I realized my father hadn't learned anything was the moment he blamed me for his collapse. Like I had taken something from him, instead of finally taking myself back. It was a Thursday night when Megan called again, not crying this time, not panicked, just quiet. And that scared me more. "Hey?" she said softly. I could hear something in the background, boxes maybe, or movement. Chaos, but the tired kind. "What's going on?" I asked. A pause, then she said it. "The house sold." Just like that. No build-up, no emotion. Just fact. I sat down slowly, because even though I knew it was coming, hearing it made it real in a way nothing else had. "That was fast," I said. "Below asking," she added. "Of course it was. Things that fall apart quickly don't get the luxury of good timing." "They're packing everything," she continued. "Grandma's moving in with Aunt Lisa. Uncle Tommy's crashing with a friend." I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see me. "And Dad?" Another pause. Longer this time. "He rented a place near the industrial area," she said. "Small. He's trying to keep the business going, but..." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. I already knew. Because businesses like his? They don't survive chaos. They barely survive structure. And he had just lost the one person who gave him that. 2 major clients are gone, she added quietly. And one of the suppliers switched him to cash only. I closed my eyes for a second. Because that was the beginning of the end. Not dramatic, not explosive, just slow suffocation. "So yeah," she said. "That's where things are." Silence settled between us. Then she said something I didn't expect. "He keeps saying you ruined him." There it was. The narrative, rewritten, clean, simple, comfortable. I almost smiled. "Of course he does," I said, "because in his version of the story, he wasn't responsible. He was a victim, and I was the villain." "He really believes it," she added. "I know. Because people like him, they don't just lie to others. They lie to themselves. It's the only way they can survive the truth." Megan exhaled softly. "I don't think he's ever going to admit what you did for him." I leaned back against the couch. "I'm not waiting for him to, and that was the difference. Old me would have stayed stuck there. Waiting, hoping, needing acknowledgement. New me didn't need it anymore." We talked a little longer. About nothing important. Then she hung up. And I just sat there in the quiet, letting it all sink in. The house was gone. The business was failing. The family had scattered. Everything that once felt permanent wasn't, and for the first time, I didn't feel responsible for any of it. A few days later, I got a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something told me to open it. Hey, it's Dad. I stared at the screen. Because this was new, no demands, no urgency. Just an introduction. Like we were strangers. I found one of your mom's recipe cards while packing. The message continued. Thought you might want it. I didn't respond right away, because after everything, that's what he chose to reach out with. Not an apology, not accountability. Just an object. A memory. Something safe, something that didn't require him to admit anything. Did you really think I was that cruel? He added. I read that line twice. Then a third time, because it hit differently. Not defensive, not aggressive, just quiet. And for a second, I felt it. That flicker of something complicated. Not forgiveness, but not anger either. Something in between. I could have written a paragraph. I could have explained everything. Laid it all out again. But I didn't. I typed one sentence. You hung it over the garage. I stared at it for a second. Then hit send. His reply didn't come. And honestly, it didn't need to. Because that one sentence, it said everything. It held the truth. The image. The moment he couldn't rewrite. The thing he couldn't escape. 4 days later, the recipe card arrived. Same one I had framed. Same handwriting. Same little note at the bottom. And for a moment, I just stood there in my kitchen, holding it, because it felt like something closing. Not a relationship, not a wound. Just a chapter. I didn't cry, not really. Just breathed. Slow, steady. Free, because for the first time in my life I wasn't tied to him anymore. Not by obligation. Not by guilt. Not by survival. I had my own life, my own space, my own peace. God, it was quiet, no yelling, no tension, no walking on eggshells. Just calm. At first, it felt wrong, like I was waiting for something bad to happen. That's what toxic environments do. They train you to expect chaos, to distrust peace, but slowly, day by day, that feeling faded, and something else took its place. Stability. I started building something of my own. My contract turned into 2, then 3. Then referrals started coming in, clients who respected me, paid me, valued me. Not because I was family, but because I was good at what I did. I opened my own LLC, set boundaries, deposits up front, no exceptions, no favors, no unpaid labor disguised as love. And for the first time, my work had weight, real weight, not invisible, not dismissed, respected. I upgraded my apartment, bought a used car cash, started cooking again, real meals, not rushed. Not eaten in the middle of fixing someone else's crisis. Just mine. And sometimes I'd catch myself sitting there at night, in total silence, and realize something that hit deeper than anything else. I wasn't tired anymore. Not that bone, deep exhaustion I had carried for years, the kind you don't even notice until it's gone. That was the real difference. Not the money, not the distance. The energy. I had it back, and I wasn't giving it away again. Months passed, and slowly, the story stopped being about them. It started being about me, but every once in a while, something would remind me. A memory, a phrase, a moment, and I'd think about that day. The banner, the laughter, the humiliation, and how they thought that was the end of my story. But it wasn't. It was the beginning. Because what they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was this: I didn't lose anything when I left. They did, and the life I built after that proved it. But the final piece of this story, the part that made everything come full circle, came on a night I wasn't expecting anything at all. And when it happened, it changed the way I saw everything. The night everything finally came full circle, I wasn't thinking about my father at all. That's how I knew I had actually moved on. It was a quiet Sunday evening in Denver. Snow had melted into that slushy gray mess along the sidewalks, and I was curled up on my couch in sweats, halfway through a movie I wasn't really paying attention to. Laptop closed. Phone on silent. No deadlines. No emergencies. No one needing anything from me. That used to feel unnatural. Now, it felt like freedom. I got up to grab a glass of water, walked past the kitchen counter, where my mom's recipe card sat framed, and smiled without even thinking about it. That little note, add extra time if Richard complains, still made me laugh. Still reminded me what love actually looked like. Light, playful, safe, not transactional, not conditional, not something you had to earn by exhausting yourself. I was just about to sit back down when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something in my gut told me to check. I picked it up, opened the message, and my stomach dropped. It wasn't my father. It wasn't Megan. It was someone I hadn't heard from in years. Mrs. Hernandez. One of my dad's old clients. A woman who used to run a small chain of local storefronts back in Arizona. I had helped her more times than I could count. Fixing contracts, cleaning up proposals, making sure deadlines didn't fall apart. She was sharp, observant, the kind of person who noticed things, and apparently, she had noticed more than I realized. Ava, the message read. I hope this is still your number. I've been trying to reach you. My heart started beating a little faster. Because this wasn't random. I heard what happened, she continued, about your father's business. And I need to ask you something directly. I sat down slowly. Eyes locked on the screen. Were you the one actually running operations behind the scenes? I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Because there it was, the question nobody in my family ever asked. The truth, finally looking for confirmation. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then typed back, Wes, 3 letters, no explanation, no defense, just truth. Her reply came almost instantly. I knew it. I blinked. What do you mean? I typed. Another pause. Then, because everything stopped working the second you disappeared. I leaned back into the couch, and for the first time in this entire situation, I felt something I hadn't expected. Validation. Not from family. Not from people who needed me to stay small, but from someone outside the system. Someone who had nothing to gain from lying. I watched your father try to handle things himself. She continued. Emails got sloppy, deadlines were missed, communication broke down. A pause. Then, that's not how it used to be. I swallowed slowly, because hearing it out loud from someone else made it real in a way even my own records hadn't. You were the difference, she added. Simple, clear, undeniable. I closed my eyes for a second. Let that sink in. Because for years I had been told the opposite, that I was useless, a burden, a freeloader. And now, here was the truth. From someone who actually saw the results of my work. I'm going to be direct, she said in her next message. I have a new contract opening up. Bigger than anything you handled before. My pulse quickened. Are you interested? I didn't answer right away, not because I wasn't sure, but because I was. Very sure. I just needed a second to process what this meant. Because this wasn't just an opportunity, this was confirmation. That everything I had done, all those invisible hours, all that unpaid labor, it wasn't nothing. It was valuable. It always had been, just not to the people who benefited from it. What kind of contract? I asked. Her response came with details, scope, numbers, expectations. And when I read the payment structure, I actually laughed. Out loud. Because it was more than double what I used to make. More than I had ever charged before. More than my father ever would have agreed to. Because he never saw my worth. He only saw what he could get from me. This is my standard rate for this level of work, she added. Standard. Not generous. Not a favor. Just fair. And that hit harder than anything else, because I realized something in that moment. The world outside my family operated differently. People paid for value. They respected competence. They didn't need to tear you down to feel secure. I stared at the screen. Then typed one word. Yes. Her reply came instantly. Good, I'll have my team send over the paperwork tomorrow. And just like that, everything shifted again. Not dramatically, not painfully, but upward, forward. Clean. I set my phone down slowly. And just sat there in the quiet. Because this was the moment it all clicked. My father didn't lose everything because I left. He lost everything because he never understood what he had. And someone else did. That was the difference. That was the entire story, and for the first time, I didn't feel angry about it. I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel the need to prove anything. I just felt done. Done explaining. Done justifying. Done shrinking myself to fit into a story that was never true. I stood up, walked over to the kitchen, and looked at my mom's recipe card again. Smiled, because somehow, it all made sense now. The past, the pain, the leaving, the silence. It wasn't the end, it was a reset. A necessary one. And the life I had now, it wasn't built on survival, it was built on choice, on boundaries, on truth. But there was still one last piece left, one final moment. That would close this story completely. And it came. When I saw something I never thought I'd see again. The last time I saw my father. He wasn't standing behind a grill, smiling like he owned the world. He was standing alone in a parking lot, looking like a man who finally understood what he had lost. It happened on a random Thursday afternoon. No warning. No build-up, just coincidence. Or maybe not. I had just finished a meeting downtown, my biggest contract yet officially signed, secured, and already moving forward. The kind of deal that would have taken my father's business years to land. I walked out of the building, heels clicking against the pavement, phone in hand, mind already moving on to the next step, and then I saw him. Across the street. At first I didn't recognize him. Not fully. Because the man standing there wasn't the same man who had raised me. The same man who had humiliated me. The same man who had stood under that banner like he had won something. This version. Smaller, not physically, but energetically. Like the world had finally pushed back, he was leaning against an old truck, talking to someone, maybe a supplier, maybe a client. His posture wasn't confident, it was careful. Measured, like every word mattered now. Like every mistake cost him something real. And then, he saw me. Time didn't stop, it didn't slow down. But something shifted, because for a second we just looked at each other. No anger, no shouting, no audience, just truth, raw, unfiltered, unavoidable. He said something to the man he was talking to, cut the conversation short, and started walking toward me. And I didn't move. I didn't run. I didn't brace myself. I just stood there. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. He stopped a few feet away. Close enough to speak, far enough to feel the distance between us. Ava, he said. My name, no edge, no authority, just recognition. Hi, Dad. My voice was calm, neutral. Not warm, not cold. Just steady. He nodded once, like he didn't know what to do next. And honestly, he probably didn't. Because this wasn't the dynamic he was used to. I wasn't the version of me he knew how to control. You look, he started, then stopped. I waited. Good, he finished. I gave a small nod, thank you. A pause stretched between us. Uncomfortable. Honest. Real. I heard you're doing well, he said. Of course he had. News travels, especially when it contradicts the story people told about you. I am, I said simply. Another pause. Then he did something I never thought I'd see. He hesitated. Actually hesitated. Like he was choosing his next words carefully. I've been meaning to, he started again. Then stopped. Shook his head slightly. Started over. I didn't realize, he said finally. And there it was, not a full apology, not accountability. But a crack. Small. But real. I didn't rush to fill the silence. Didn't make it easier for him. Because that wasn't my job anymore. I didn't realize how much you were doing. He continued. For the business. For everything. I held his gaze. You didn't want to, I said. Not harsh, not soft, just true. He flinched slightly. And that told me more than any apology ever could. Because it meant he knew. Deep down, he had known. I thought. He started, then stopped again, like he couldn't even finish the sentence. Like the version of reality he had built didn't sound right anymore. I thought you needed me, he said quietly. And that was the truth. Not about me. I nodded once. I did, I said. A flicker of something crossed his face. Hope maybe. Regret. Something fragile. But not the way you thought. I added. And just like that, it was gone. Because that was the part he never understood. I didn't need him to carry me. I needed him to see me, respect me, value me, and he never did. Another silence. Then he looked down for a second. Took a breath. I messed up, he said simple. Direct, late, but real. I studied his face, not searching for excuses. Not looking for redemption. Just seeing him for who he actually was. Not the version I had hoped for. Not the version he pretended to be. Just a man who built his life on control, and lost it when that control disappeared. I know, I said. No anger. No softness. Just acknowledgement. He nodded slowly. Like that was all he expected. Maybe all he deserved. I'm trying to fix things, he added, the business, everything. I didn't respond right away. Because this part mattered. Not to him. To me. I hope you do, I said finally. And I meant it. Not because I owed him anything, but because I didn't carry his failure anymore. It wasn't mine. It never was. He looked at me like he wanted to say more, like there were things sitting just beneath the surface. Apologies, explanations, regret. But he didn't say them. And honestly, he didn't need to, because some things don't get fixed with words, they get left behind. Well, he said awkwardly, stepping back slightly, I won't keep you. I nodded, take care, Dad. And just like that, it was over. No dramatic ending, no emotional breakdown, no perfect closure, just two people standing in the same place, finally understanding the truth, and choosing different paths. I turned and walked away. Not fast. Not slow, just forward. And I didn't look back. Because I didn't need to. That version of my life was already behind me. Later that night, I sat in my apartment, the city quiet outside, my mom's recipe card still sitting on the counter. I made her chicken pot pie for the first time in years. Followed every step, even the little note at the bottom. And as I sat there, eating in complete silence, I realized something that hit deeper than anything else in this entire story. I was never the freeloader. I was the foundation. The safety net. The invisible system that kept everything from falling apart. And the moment I left, the truth showed up, not because I exposed it, but because they could no longer hide it. People like to ask me if I regret not helping one last time. If I regret walking away, if I regret letting everything fall. And the answer is always the same. No, because walking away didn't destroy my family, it revealed it. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stop saving people who are perfectly willing to let you drown. I took one last bite, set the plate down, and smiled to myself. Because the girl they laughed at under that banner, she didn't disappear. She just stopped carrying people who never planned to carry her back. And that's the kind of ending you don't come back from. That's the kind of ending where you finally choose yourself.